Of the fantasy baseball season, and he has a few hitters I'd look to sell high and trade away this week. The first guy is David Fletcher of the Los Angeles Angels. So Fletcher, he's been one of the better players the last few weeks here in fantasy baseball with a ranking of 9 in the last couple weeks. And this guy, a lot of versatility, obviously. Second, third, short, and outfield he qualifies in fantasy baseball this year. On the season, 2 home runs, 38 RBIs, 4 stolen bases, 54 runs scored, a .313 batting average, and a .339 on base. So right here, his on base to batting average is horrible this season, in my opinion. Only 26 points higher, and obviously he's a guy that puts the ball in play a lot. Only 40 strikeouts in 348 at-bats this season. But the last couple weeks here for Fletcher, he's been white hot. 2 home runs, 13 RBIs, 7 runs scored, .524 average, but a .524 on base. So right now, these numbers obviously aren't sustainable here for Fletcher. And with all this versatility and the high batting average the last few weeks, he's definitely a player I would sell high. And a classic sell high candidate. Early in the season, he was a drop candidate, is Fletcher, because he wasn't doing much of anything. And still this season, his stats don't really pop out at me, especially the on-base average, like I mentioned. He's only got a couple home runs on the season, which you could find on the waiver wire. His runs scored are pretty decent, middle of the pack with 54. But besides that, he's not much of a fantasy asset, in my opinion here. Right now, while he's on fire, is Fletcher. It's a perfect time to sell him high. And I don't think you'll have trouble getting a good starting pitcher for him, especially with his versatility at all those positions. So the last few games for Fletcher: July 9th at Seattle, 3 for 5 with a homer and an RBI. July 10th at Seattle, 1 for 4. July 11th at Seattle, 4 for 5, a homer, 4 RBIs, and 2 runs scored. July 16th versus Seattle, 3 for 5, 2 runs and a rib. July 17th versus Seattle, 3 for 5 with 5 RBIs. And yesterday versus Seattle, 0 for 5. So right here, he's had some big ball games, is Fletcher, especially with 10 RBIs in his last 4 games. But right now, I don't see it sustainable. And the numbers prove to me it's not going to be sustainable. So he's the first sell high candidate this week at the hitting position. The second guy is Wil Myers of the San Diego Padres. So Wil Myers here, he's been a pretty decent hitter throughout his career. And last season he had a huge season. But this year, the numbers, they don't jump off the board as well here for Myers. 12 homers, 44 RBIs, 31 runs scored, 5 stolen bases, .258 batting average, and a .337 on base percentage. So right now, the last couple weeks though, he's stepped his numbers up. .375 average, .488 on base, 3 homers, 15 RBIs, and 8 runs scored. But Wil Myers, he's done most of his damage over the last few weeks in one ball game, where obviously this Padre team went off, scoring 24 runs in that game there versus the Washington Nationals. And Wil Myers, he's a streaky player, no doubt about it. And we've seen it in his Tampa Bay Ray days, and we've seen it now here for him here with the Padres. So the last couple games for him: July 9th versus Colorado, 2 for 3 with a rib. July 10th versus the Rockies, 0 for 3. July 11th versus the Rockies, 0 for 2. July 16th at Washington, 3 for 6 with 2 homers, 7 RBIs, and 3 runs scored. July 17th at Washington, 1 for 2 with a run. And July 18th, he pinched hit and 0 for 1 in that ball game in Washington. So right now, after one big game for Myers, if you could try to sell him high and get something of more consistency and certainty, this is a perfect time to do it. I still think Myers can hit 20, 25 homers when it's all said and done this season. But right now, he's a perfect sell high candidate, especially coming off a big game like he did a few days ago. The next hit is Max Muncy of the Los Angeles Dodgers. So Muncy, he's a player all season pretty much. He's been on and off this sell high list, and I know he qualifies first, second, and third. And he's having a big year as Muncy, no doubt about it. 21 homers, 57 RBIs, 57 runs scored, 273 batting average, and a 412 on base. So right here, the power is definitely legit for Muncy. That I'm not saying isn't legit, but the batting average I think is going to drop for him. And he's a guy that's a very streaky player as well as Muncy. He could have weeks where he's batting 400, and then he could have weeks where he's hitting 085 or something. But the last couple weeks here for him, 3 home runs, 10 RBIs, 8 runs scored, a 325 batting average, and a 386 on base. So very good numbers there for Max Muncy, and especially his home run total on the season with 21, so he could finish the season if he really gets hot with 35 to 40 homers. But that's a good selling point, in my opinion, to getting rid of Muncy on your team. He's already got the power, and he's a guy that definitely hits the home runs in bunches as well, where he could have a tear where he hits 10 home runs in a month, and then the next month he'll hit 2 or 3. So right now, with the power and the batting average up over the last few weeks, he's a perfect sell-high candidate, and it wouldn't be hard to get rid of him and get good value for him at this point, in my opinion. The last few games for Muncy: July 9th versus Arizona, 1 for 4. July 10th versus Arizona, 1 for 3 with a run and 2 RBIs. July 11th versus Arizona, 3 for 5, a homer, 3 RBIs, and 2 runs scored. July 16th at the Rockies, 1 for 5 with a run. July 17th at the Rockies, 4 for 5 with 2 homers, 5 RBIs, and 2 runs scored. And July 18th at the Rockies, 0 for 5. So right here, here's the proof about Muncy that he's a streaky guy, and he hits it in bunches and have big games in bunches. So the last couple weeks here, he's only had 2 big games as Muncy: the 4 for 5 with the 2 homers, 5 RBIs, and the game versus Arizona with a homer and 3 RBIs. So right now, besides that, he hasn't done much of anything, and he's just a streaky and not a consistent player, in my opinion. And if you could sell him high, this is the time to do it here with Muncy. The next hitter is Jesus Aguilar of the Miami Marlins. So Aguilar, he's having a great season here. But Aguilar, another guy that's inconsistent. But right here, 17 homers, 68 RBIs, 275 batting average, a 336 on base, and 31 runs scored. So right here, Aguilar's having a monster year, and he's definitely up there in the league or towards it with the 68 RBIs. In the last couple weeks from him, 4 home runs, 15 RBIs, 343 batting average, and a 410 on base. So right here, if he stays with this Marlin team, I think he'll be all right. But if the Marlins do trade Starlin Marte and a couple of other big guys in their lineup who protect Aguilar, he's not going to see many pitches, and he's not going to drive as many runs. So right now, I don't think his RBI total is going to be huge when it's all said and done this season, even though he's probably going to finish the year with 80 to 90. But I'm saying the pace he's on now, I don't think he's driving in 115, 120 runs here as Aguilar. I think it's going to slow down. And especially if the Marlins trade Marte, like I mentioned, and other guys who set the table and are on base for Aguilar to drive him in. And right now, he's been on a total hot streak since the All-Star break completed. So the last few games here for Aguilar: July 9th versus Atlanta, 0 for 2. July 10th versus Atlanta, 1 for 4. July 11th versus Atlanta, 2 for 5, a homer, 4 RBIs. July 16th at Philly, 3 for 6 with a homer, 4 RBIs. And July 17th at Philly, 1 for 4 with a homer and 2 RBIs. And yesterday versus Philly, pinch hit 1 for 1. So right here, Aguilar, the last 3 out of 4 games is where he got a lot of numbers with 10 RBIs and 3 homers in the time. And right now, after those 3 big games, it's a definite sell-high time here for Aguilar, because he was a guy a lot of waiver wires you saw him on, and he's been added in 10% of fantasy leagues, so he's owned in 67% of leagues right now. And if you picked him up and could flip him for something more consistent and better for fantasy, it's a perfect time to do so. And the 5th and final hitter I look to sell high and trade away here is Mitch Haniger of the Seattle Mariners. So Haniger, a similar situation with him like Max Muncy this season, a streaky hitter and a guy who definitely has legit power, but I don't think it's going to continue all the way this season. And he also could be traded at the trade deadline here in the next couple weeks from the Mariners. On the season for Haniger, 22 homers, 58 RBIs, 65 runs scored, a 266 batting average, and a 322 on base. And the last couple weeks for him, he's been on a tear: 4 homers, 11 RBIs, 12 runs scored, a 394 batting average, 475 on base, and 12 runs scored. So Haniger here, he's hitting everything in sight, and he's showing massive power right now for fantasy owners in this Mariner team. But he's another guy that hits him in bunches, and right now he's been hot in July so far, and he's a perfect time to sell him high, Haniger. Because another thing, if the Mariners do keep him, or they trade other parts that protect him in the lineup, he's not going to get as many pitches, and he's not going to hit as many home runs as well, even though I think this season will finish with 30 to 33 home run range. So the last few games for Haniger: July 8th versus the Yankees, 2 for 4 with a homer and an RBI. July 9th versus the Angels, 2 for 4, a homer, 4 RBIs. July 10th versus the Angels, 1 for 3 with a run. July 11th versus the Angels, 1 for 4. July 16th at the Angels, 3 for 5, a homer, 2 RBIs, and 3 runs scored. And July 17th at the Angels, 1 for 3 with a homer and 4 RBIs. And July 18th at the Angels, 1 for 3 with 3 runs. So Haniger right now, he's having a big month of July here for this Mariner team. And hey, the Mariners may be hoping he has the big July, and they could get more for him in a trade as well in the deadline in 2 weeks if they decide to trade him off. And fantasy owners could trade him off and get good value for him, I think, especially with the 22 home runs this season. I think it's a good selling point, but right now I don't think the average is legit. He's more of a 230, 240 hitter, and he'll finish the season, like I mentioned, with 30 homers, but I don't see the average above 260, and it's at 266 right now, but I think it's going to drop down, and he's a player that's on a hot streak and a definite sell-high candidate, so that's a few hitters I look to sell high and trade away here in Week 15 of the fantasy baseball season.